I'm Dan Ashton, and I'm a member of the lecture subcommittee. And we do 2 of these lectures a month. And so today we have an interesting subject, which is going to be the romance of sailing. And it's going to be Lou and Zendorf. I never say it right.
Zevanove.
Zevanove family and their experiences. This is going to be a romance story about their life and love of sailing. Let me ask you the question, how many people have been saltwater sailors?
Oh my God, they could do that.
So you may have competition here.
Why?
Okay. Well, it's Lou and his wife Diane that put this sailing story together, and a lifetime of together. With Diane's help, we'll keep the story on track. My personal experience with saltwater sailing was 6 months in the Navy, and it was interesting, but certainly not romantic. My next closest to sailing is I bought a kit to build a canoe, a fiberglass canoe, and my wife and I would go out on the lake in this afternoon and wouldn't romance, but would enjoy the scenery and relax. I want to build a little background of these 2 people, and I think it's important to the story. Diane was always been a member, president, or lived and born in Pleasanton, and she's part of the Olaf family, which was very important in the early days here, and up until fairly recently. Is it an uncle that was the?
My grandfather was mayor.
Yes, but then more recently you had.
Tom was.
Your nephew.
More recently you had a relative that was the dirt.
Attorney of Alameda County.
Yes, okay. And that was after I moved here. Okay, now Lou's background is very different. His mother was.
Way to go, Lou.
His mother was of Italian heritage, and his father was Serbian. His father was a career Navy Coast Guard sailor, I guess you would call. And I think probably it had to do with whether they were in the war or not, as to whether he was Coast Guard or whether he was Navy.
Yes.
Okay. He was away much of the time out on duty, and Lou and his mother, Lou's only child, moved about quite a bit and living in available military type housing. So we had a different kind of upbringing than his wife. They were married in the Pleasanton Presbyterian Church, which was down on
2nd Street.
Second and I got it. I can't say the word. Neal Street. Yes, the church is still there by a different congregation. Now Lou graduated in electrical engineering, a degree, and he worked for 3 different tech companies, 2 of which were one was which Livermore Lab, and another was NASA. And what was the third one, Lou?
Texas Instruments.
Okay. Early, Lou became interested in sailing, and he has purchased several boats.
Can't hear.
Okay. And today he has one that he enjoys. He goes out sailing with one of his sons almost every Wednesday morning out on the bay. Help me welcome Lou and Diane.
this is where a 99-year-old person introduces a 90-year-old person. You think it was an old folks home or something. But anyway, I want to talk about this person. That would be this person. 50 years ago. 50 years ago. I mean, we're talking romance here. 50 years ago, she was raising these guys here. We've got 475 pounds of guys, and they came out of her. She was 89 pounds when we married. I didn't think that could happen. But in any case, she was very, very active in raising the children, very active in the community, and she would do the can-can dancing at the yacht club, at the country club, at any club that would have her. I've seen her dancing on tables. She did. And that's 52 years ago. She was very, very involved in everything. She was an extrovert. I was an introvert. I had to be. Look at the greaseball hair on this. That's me. I mean, I couldn't go anywhere. And there'll be questions later. What?
You got a pipe in your hand, in your left hand.
Okay, he says I have a pipe. You want to hear about the pipe? You want to know what's in the pipe?
I'm saying it goes with the greasy.
Okay, so Diane wanted babies, and I didn't see any reason for them, but anyway, she wanted babies, and I wanted to do a career. No, we got together, and let's see what we have here. Chris. We would go down to Santa Cruz and other places where we could see boats, and we saw boats bobbing out there, and that really fascinated me, just bobbing boats, because there were people. I think you could even see people, and they would be hanging out their laundry in the rigging, so that was a clue that they were living there. And then in the evening, like this, they're drinking wine. And that's how much I knew about sailing. And I thought, oh, I've got to do that. And Diane says, well, but we need a house, and we have children, and so on and so on. But she said, she was very generous. She says, okay, we can get a boat. So she let me get a boat. That's a boat. Yeah. And she let me play with it. And then I decided I would really like to have a bigger boat. And she said, but our shower went out, and we don't have a shower downstairs. And I said, but I want a boat. And she says, okay, get a boat. The shower was out for 4 years, 5 years. Yeah. But I had a boat. That's the kind of person she was. That's the kind of person she is. So anyway, I said, let's get a bigger boat. If we get a bigger boat, we're going to need some crew. And so we thought, well, here's two of us thinking about crew. And the romance that goes with crew, because if we grew our own crew, we wouldn't have to pay them. And so that was something that I thought I could help with. And I thought about it.
There's the pipe.
And she slept on it. And between my thinking and the aft cabin here on this boat, there's a baby baby there.
That's the way I knew her.
That's you.
Yeah.
That's not you?
No,
Take him back.
no.
Is it Marty?
No, at first I thought it was Mark.
Okay, well, there'll be no questions until
But look
I'm
at,
taking a little license here because I'm a sailor.
Was she in Orlov?
In any case,
She,
this is she again.
yeah, I think she
And here's the greasy guy. Not quite as greasy.
I knew Betty Ann.
I may have bathed. I don't know. In any case, we had a baby, and that seemed like a good idea. So we said, well, we need a bigger boat. So we got a bigger boat, and babies happened. Not these are babies from our babies. Okay, is this romantic yet? Is it? Yeah. Okay. Kind of carnal, but anyway, that's what happened. And this was a great boat. Diane loved this boat. Diane likes television. I like television, but this boat had 3 television sets that we put on it. It had 2 heads, 2 showers, stand-up refrigerator, a diesel generator separate from the primary power, so we could be at sea, start the diesel generator, and run TVs, run heaters, anything. So it was kind of.
Name of it.
This was Eastern Star. You made me call it Eastern Star because you were an Eastern Star. But I wanted to call it Eastern Star. So on the back of the boat it said Eastern Star, and then there was an Eastern Star symbol. And at that time I was into Zen Buddhism, and there was a Zen Buddhist symbol on the other side. No conflict. So this is the same boat in Santa Cruz, and you get a little better picture. She was very truncated. If the designer had completed the length of the boat, it would have been out here. So it would have been, instead of 42 or so, it would have been closer to 50. The mast was higher than most 50-foot boats, so it was very powerful. It heeled over a lot. It was a cruising boat, but we raced it. Yeah. And we went lots of places with this boat. So the idea was that we could live on the boat with our babies, and we would live on it sometimes for a week, sometimes for months, and at different locations. Well, one of the things that you need, or probably the most important thing after you have a beloved, is to have time. You need time to do this. And so I took an early retirement from the lab so that we could do this. So I retired 40 years ago, and I'm 90. In any case, sailing was the big inducement to do that. Sailing is complicated. This is the mast of that particular boat. These things are called winches, not wenches, winches, not wenches, but you use muscle power for everything. And you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 winches there. Sometimes I think we have like up to 11 winches to do various things, pull things in and out and so on. But it's complicated, so if a person gets involved in this, it's different than power boating. This is a physical activity. But I was okay with that. The romance of sailing, actually sailing the boat, part of it manifests with me when you have the equivalent of 4 or 5 Cadillacs in weight, and you have a 8 to 10 knot wind, and the boat goes along as a kind of a communion with nature. Anybody understand that? Say it again, communion with nature. You're being moved by the force of nature, and you're part of it. And it's up to you to try to harness it And sometimes you can, sometimes you can't.
God bless you.
So we went to various places in the bay, outside the bay, as I said. Here's the Golden Gate Bridge, as viewed from which mountain? Anybody have a guess? Mount Livermore. Who said that? 2 or 3 people. That's Mount Livermore on Angel Island. And so we would frequently go there and hike. You can hike that island, and we would overnight on the boat. And Diane got so she could sail the boat from place to place. Once everything was winched in, of course, and everything was, all the muscle, that's how I got my exercise. But anyway, she had some experiences. She was at the helm one time when...
Oh, no.
Oh, no. What came up? Just talking to this thing.
A whale.
How'd you know it was a whale?
Well, it was a whale because it looked at me and it blew at me.
It blew at you. Okay. So a whale came up right alongside the boat, and we were in 38 feet of water. That's shallow. And the whale came up and then decided to dive underneath our boat, and we draw over 6 feet. And I said, hang on. I was on the foredeck. She says I was out wandering around. I was on the foredeck. There's nothing I could do about the whale. And so I fully expected the whale to knock us flat. It didn't touch us. It came up on the other side. And I said, wow, you're really good at that wheel thing. And she was. We would be in harbors where we couldn't turn the boat around to get out. We had to turn the boat around, but you just couldn't do it in one swing. So you had to go gabooga, 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 gabooga. Gabooga. And she's good at gabooga. And so we'd get it turned around, and she would put it in reverse, put it in forward, all of that. So we're getting near the point where I'm going to have questions, but I do want to mention racing, sailboat racing. This is a classic picture on the bay. Neither of these are our boats. These are older boats, wooden boats designed for the bay. They call them lead mines because they have enormous amount of lead down below. But these are 2 competitors. One of these boats has a fellow on board. Jesse, is it the one on the left?
Yeah, you can see the little bald spot.
The little bald spot is a fellow named Jim Jesse. So on Wednesdays, when Steve and I go down to the boat, we go to an old Commodore's lunch. And he's one of the guys. But he was in this classic shot, which became a study for protests. Because when you're racing, if a boat doesn't give way and they're between you and the wind, you can come up and tap them. Now, if you imagine going at this speed with marginal control and no brakes, a tap can be very, very serious. The hulls are in fact in contact here, and the spinnakers are barely being controlled. This is why Diane never really liked to race with me. But she did. She just said it. She did. But what Diane would do, she did all the work of putting the crew together and getting the food together and getting the wine together. And she said, well, this guy likes this kind of wine, this guy likes that kind of wine. I said, but we're doing this on a shoestring. I can't afford all of this. But she would do it anyway. Her cookies became so popular that boats would come up to us, not this close, not this close. And they'd say, give us some Diane cookies, and we'd throw cookies at them. Chocolate, oh boys say chocolate chip cookies. So she was famous that way. This is an Islander 36. formulated this class very, very early. I think it was 50 years ago, 51 years ago. And we were able to get the boat. I like to be able to find value added rather than paying straight retail. So the dealer was just introducing this boat, and I said, check our race record. What we will do is make the boat famous, and you will sell a lot of them. And he said, okay. And so he sold it to us for almost nothing, and we made it famous. We won 3 national championships with it. We made 2 TV commercials with it. And TV commercials are things that people like to see sailboats in. They don't realize that they tippy, then it's going to spill your drink. I mean, it's going to, and so, but when they see the colors, and this particular spinnaker Diane designed, and it was rainbow with punctuated black panels, and that showed our sincerity in winning races. And watch out, we're aggressive. Watch out. And sure enough, we won races with that chute. And the sailmakers sold a bunch of them just like that. But she did not get a royalty. So, on the back of our big boats, we would carry a dinghy. So, the dinghy that we had was a little sailboat. And the mast got broken driving it into a tree when we were we actually drove it into a tree. And the mast got broken, and who fixed it? Anybody know Rick in the wood shop? And I said, Rick, can you fix my dinghy boom? He says, your what? My dinghy boom. And he says, let me see it. So I let him see it. I mean, he's a nice guy. And he fixed that sucker. It was really badly damaged. So he fixed that sucker, and the dinghy is now viable. And, oops, let's see. And there's the dinghy. This is where old dinghies go. This is our home in Pleasanton, which we still have. And if you can see to the left of those chairs is a white thing. That's a dinghy, a lap straight dinghy that's tied to the house in case the tide comes up. And it's tied to a large obsidian rock that I was able to get a hold of. So it's secured there until the city came to me and said, you can't have an RV in the front yard. What? And so what happened, there was a guy that had a trailer or something, a motorhome in his front yard, and the city complained because he left it there. So he made a survey of all the neighborhoods, and I got written up for having an RV in the front yard. I said, it's not an RV, it's a garden decoration. And the city said, garden decoration, keep it there, it's okay. So that's what happens to old dinghies. Not so bad. I look at it and I remember that. Now, do you hear any romance yet? Have you heard any romance? There's romance of the waves, romance of the sea, babies. I mean, work, work, work. I had to work, work, work. We had babies. There's here now. So what I want to offer you is the feeling of memories, the feeling of closeness. Not all of our loved ones are here. All together now? All. Okay. I'm going to end the primary part of my talk with this. I'll entertain any question, but I'm going to leave this up there because when I go to sleep at night frequently, I you can pull up Puppies at Play, and I watch puppies at play. I particularly like this. Okay, that's it. Anybody have any kind of question? Was that Stu? That's the kind of remarks I get from Stu, but I have to say, thank you, Stu, for helping me get this presentation into a computer. I want to thank you for that. And I think, Candy's still here, and so did she help.
Here's a question.
Here's a question. Han, yeah.
You and I have talked a little bit about sailing. The
Yeah.
question I never asked you is, where did you learn
Ah.
to sail? And who?
It wasn't from pushing that little boat, you know. It turns out I did not know how to sail, as I said. I just said.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Oh, where did I learn how to sail?
Okay, thank you.
So I would go down and watch the kids sail El Toros. These are little 8-foot dinghies, like this, from here to here. And they would be able to leave the dock, and the wind would blow them away, and they would be able to come back. And I was amazed that they could come back against the wind by tacking. And I said, well, okay, I'll do that. So the wind blew me away, and I couldn't get back. And so I read a book, and then I read another book, and then I could get back. So I learned from watching kids, reading books. So then I did that for a couple of years, enjoyed the romance of sailing, but I thought, well, maybe we should try racing. So I'll see how good I can get back and how good I can be blown away. So I entered a race, the gun went off, and everybody ran off and hid. And I couldn't go. I thought, well, I got everything in tight as possible. I don't understand. I mean, they have stronger guys. What's the deal? It doesn't have anything to do with that. It's a finesse thing. And the way you take a boat into the wind and so on takes years to learn how to do it. But so I read more books, so on. Eventually, in the Islander 36 class, oh, by the way, when the boat got popular, we ended up with 150 of these Islander 36s on the bay. 150 of these. So the dealer did very, very well by essentially giving us the boat.
Thanks.
Yes?
You might explain lift and how that pulls the sailboat forward rather than the wind pushing it forward.
Are you some kind of scientist or something? This is Ron Vandenberg, and you want to know how it works. It's Bernoulli. It's mostly Bernoulli, and what that is the way a wing works. He has some airplanes, so he likes the idea that when he's going forward, that the air going over the top of the wing is less dense because Bernoulli said so, and the equation says there will be lift, and so the plane actually gets off the ground. The sail is the same way. It has a shape that causes one side to be rarefied, the air is rarefied, and the boat is actually sucked forward. So that's going not directly into the wind, but slightly off the wind. You're being pulled forward, and there's a keel down here that keeps you from going sideways. More about Bernoulli?
The spinnaker is separate from the sail. I know sailing. The spinnaker is just the power, right? And then you just let the wind
Okay,
fill that.
I don't know about all those words, JJ, but a spinnaker is that big colorful sail out in front.
Yeah,
And on this boat, it's about 1,200 square feet. On one of our other boats, it was like 1,800 square feet. That's like a house. So when the wind would catch that, it would make the boat heel severely, especially on the bay if it's blowing 25, 35. But what you do is keep the boat under the spinnaker. So if the spinnaker is going this way, you keep it under there. Otherwise, it will knock you flat. The spinnaker will knock you flat. But you want to go this way. So it doesn't matter. You go this way. And then you jibe. And now we go toward Diane. She said yes, so she approved that jibe. Okay, is that good, Candy?
Yeah. You said you sail every Wednesday. What size boat, and describe it a little to us?
The boat that we sail is an Islander 36.
So that means it's 36 feet long?
It's 36 and 2 inches.
Okay.
But yes, it's the boat we made the TV commercials with and so on. A detail. We got to bigger and bigger boats, and we traded this Islander 36 in years ago because we couldn't handle 2 boats or 3 boats. We traded it in, and they gave us a very good price for it, probably more than twice of what we paid for it. And then it had appeal to us, so 15 years later, I said, let's go. Diane said, what are we going to do today? I said, let's go see if we can find Diana, and we'll buy the boat back. She said, okay. Now that's Diana. Isn't that nice? She says, okay. So we found it at Moss Landing, and the guy he was not a sailor. He was a guy that would work on the boat to be away from his wife. And that's just the kind of guy I need, because he fixed the boat. The boat was in better condition than when we sold it for a lot of money. He put in all kinds of things that we didn't have. And I said, well, why are you doing this? He says, well, I'm going to sell the boat. Oh, and I had a price in mind. And he came in at half the price. I could hardly contain myself. I mean, that's when the Italian, Serbian stuff said, oh boy, okay. And so I said, okay, we'll do that, but please finish that work and so on. In any case, he finished the work. We bought the boat back. He sailed with me for a few years, so it was a very amenable kind of situation, but we rebought the boat, yeah, and went back in the club, because we were in the Islander 36 club that we were instrumental in forming. And when we came back, let's say originally I was a Commodore. When they came back, they honored us with all kinds of things, including free membership for the rest of our lives, and so on. Yeah.
Are you docked in San Francisco?
Alameda.
Alameda. And how many crew members are a minimum to take it out?
None. I could do it alone. But Steve doesn't like it. Steve owns the boat now. But he lets me sail it.
What kind of technology does a boat like that have? I mean, do you have any, like...
Yeah, are you talking electronics?
Yeah, like wind, yes.
What kind of electronics?
So, I'll stand because it's hard to speak that way.
Use the
So there's,
microphone.
okay. Oh, this will be interesting.
I'll stand here because I've got...
You want this,
Does this work?
this guy, yeah.
Oh, boy, I'm attached to you here.
I knew that.
Okay, so
It's an umbilical.
the answer to your question is, with marine electronics, you can go a wide gamut. I mean, it spend a lot of money. I raced this Sunday on a boat. It had almost nothing on it for marine electronics, but we were racing a small race in the Oakland estuary. There really wasn't a huge need for navigation equipment. On Diana sort of sits in the middle. We have, of course, VHF radios, handheld radios. On your phone now, you can get GPS, and you can have navigation apps. So I can do a lot of navigation with this phone. It also has the ability to track shipping that's coming in. And you can literally see where the shipping is, and that approximate to your location, which is very helpful on foggy days. And it's essentially a free app. The navigation app is, you have to download some charts that they charge you for, but it's not too bad. And so there's a lot you can do now just with a phone. People who go to sea and, across oceans, they will buy much more expensive electronics and spend lots and lots of money on electronics. But we keep it kind of simple. And you have to be a little careful, because there's some people whose sailing experience started with the marine electronics, and they tend to sail the boat more by staring at screens than by looking. And you really have to look out and see what's going on.
That's not romantic.
No.
So we're more romantic.
Steve.
What?
There.
Oh. Oh, you know these people?
Well, actually, I do.
Are you here?
Yeah, I'm here. This is Luke. This is my dad, right here. This is Roy Adams. This is Carl Aiken. Correct me if I'm wrong, Steve. That's Steve. He's on the sheet with Roy watching the spinnaker curl. That's Rob Magoon. That's Brent Cullimore. I don't know who that is.
That's
That-
Torsten.
Is that Torsten? Oh, that's Torsten.
From Denmark.
And this skinny guy on the foredeck, that's me. Have fun, Dad. Lay on, Macduff.
By the way, how you have to race.
I think you could explain that positioning right there.
What would you like me to? Why don't you let me tell me what you want to hear?
Oh, I just said, explain a little bit more about racing, because racing is interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure that people care that much about racing. If you'd ask some questions, I'd be happy to keep you here all day. But yeah, we're doing pretty well here. These are other Islander 36s. By the way, we made it what's called a one design class. That means we can race boat for boat, no handicap. That's a big deal. That increases the value of the boat by about 25 or 30%, because people want to get away from the handicapping, such as in golf or whatever, and it's just boat for boat. Okay, you see, Ron, you see the way that the mainsail has a curve in it, and interestingly, the sail is trimmed differently at the bottom than it is at the top on purpose, because the wind velocity at the top can be twice as much, maybe even more, than at the bottom. So it's in a different wind. It's in a different apparent wind. So anyway, that shows you. So we have crew members. One fellow has been with us for over 35 years. And he worked his way through the winches and learned other things, and he finally bought his own Islander 36. And that's the way to go, by the way. If is to sail with other people. It costs a lot less, you can learn fast, and that works.
Do you need a driver's license?
You do not. In fact, until recently, a 12-year-old, a 10-year-old could drive a boat, and a guy at the helm. I think you can drink and drive. Yeah. But how do you get the kids interested? Because these days kids don't want to be with their parents. You know how that works. But somehow I came up with the idea of letting Mark and Steve drive the boat, entered the race with their name, and they did very, very well. Herb Kane wrote them up about how they won and embarrassed their father by doing such a good job. Such a good job.
But you talk.
It was a fluff.
Lou, where have you sailed outside the Bay Area?
Outside,
Yes, where have you gone?
Longest trip.
Tahiti, 3,700 miles. 3 weeks, 3 days, 3 hours. It was a race, all out, 24 hours a day. I'll never do it again. It turns out you live like a beast. If you were cruising, you could take it easy, have a drink, and so on. But it was decided, I sailed on another man's boat, it was decided we needed the boat to be light as possible, so we didn't take some things like towels We didn't take a beer. I thought it'd be nice to have a beer. And we were beaten by another boat that carried 29 cases of beer. Let that be a lesson to you.
Have you sailed the Atlantic?
No, I haven't sailed on the Atlantic.
If it's nighttime, do you drop anchor?
Hi. The water on the way to Tahiti averaged 3 miles deep. And you need, a good anchor is a scope of 7 to 1. So that would be 21 miles of chain. The boat would be above, up to here. No, we don't anchor at night. Someone else asked me if we go home every night. No.
How do you navigate to Tahiti?
Well, we did it in the old days. And now you have all the GPS and so on. People that are racing will bring along 3, 4, 5 of them in case they fail. And so that's very much better. We use the sextant and reduction tables. By the way, we left Point Furman in Southern California, and the Tuamotus were at least 1,000 miles, maybe 1,500 miles away, and we had to go through a small passage in the Tuamotus. So that means that after all that distance, you have to hit that passage, and we went through at nighttime, and that's not part of the United States, so they do not have lights. There's no lighthouses and nothing that you could see. So we thought we were there within 50 miles of it, and we just sort of held our breath for 50 miles. Wow. Which brings up another thing. We were racing against other boats that were much faster, and when you go from the northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere, you go through the doldrums. That's where there's virtually no wind. And if they are faster, they could get there when there was more wind, and maybe there'd only be a day of no wind. And you could come along and have 3 days of no wind. And that's when things get really rough on the boat. A lot of anger. We had fights. One guy pulled a knife on another guy, and I was standing back, and he pulled the knife out of his scabbard, and I was standing back here, and it just missed my eyes. And I'm thinking, it sliced my eyes, and we're 2,000 miles out. How does that work? But he didn't get me. So, anything else anybody think of? Rick?
When you say 36 feet, is that waterline or bow to stern?
That's overall length. The waterline length is 28.3, and that governs the theoretical hull speed.
Exactly.
Yeah, because what happens as the boat, well, here it is, right here. If you'll indulge me for a moment, it's actually a sine wave. And when that sine wave goes from here and engulfs the stern, as it does here, that's the theoretical speed. So we're probably going, let's see the wind, we're probably going about 7 knots plus. And
Who's ahead?
well, who asked? It turns out that under spinnaker, I'd rather be low so that we can come up hot.
Right.
So we could come up hot. Hot means the boat with the spinnaker like this would rather not be dead downwind. It would rather be a little hotter than that. So he set me up.
In other words, we're ahead.
You probably didn't experience this, but we had friends that sailed across the Atlantic Ocean, and they had to have a gun on board because of piracy. But if you were in racing, you probably didn't have that kind of experience.
Well, when we were racing, we were not in close together like this going to Tahiti. This is at the start going to Tahiti. we were very, very close. As a matter of fact, there were Save the World people that were saying that you're all going to die, and they had big signs and placards. Well, you know, I had some anxiety about doing this to begin with. I mean, I've got a wife, 2 children, so on, and I'm risking everything to do this, and they're saying you're going to die. In any case, you're really close together. But as you get out further, Diane was watching where we were on the charts because she could follow it on the charts. And it looks like, wow, you're just right next to each other. Well, if you're 10 miles apart, forget about it. You're over the horizon. From this height, you can't see each other. You have no knowledge of the other person except for the radio check-in every day. The radio check-in, you tell them where you are. But some people don't do that. They don't want anybody to know where they are, which is a dangerous thing. Oh, by the way, that brings up the subject of sailboat racing and cheating. Cheating is widespread by human beings. Don't trust them. It turns out that people do all sorts of things by modifying the boat, modifying the keel, and when we were racing here, we had what's called a fixed propeller. So that's more drag. We owned a folding propeller, but I asked the group, I think I was Commodore, I asked the group, would you like to all go and buy a feathering prop, which is, at that time, was maybe $1,500 or $2,000. They said, no, we'll use fixed. Okay, if you're boat for boat, what's the difference? Well, we had one guy who was an attorney. I hope there's no attorneys here. But anyway, we went down and checked his boat because he was doing better than we expected. And we could see in the water that this thing looked like it's a folding prop. So we took a broom and we moved it. And sure enough, I called the fellow and said, what's the deal? Do you have a folding? Oh, no, I don't have a folding prop, because that would change his rating. And he couldn't really race with us. So he says he didn't. I said, well, then your propeller is broken because it's waving. And he said, oh, you know, last time I hauled the boat, I bet the yard put one of those on. Yeah, like we take your car in, you know, and they're going to put another motor in it or something. Yeah, right, free. And so I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Unless you remove that and drop out of the last 4 races that you were in, I'm going to turn you over to your yacht club. And that's why everyone has to belong to a yacht club. It's one of the governing mechanisms, because the yacht club would have thrown him out and he could not race anymore. So he admitted and he backed out of all those races. Cheating.
Lou, did you pack a lot of Dramamine or not?
We have it on the boat now. Some guests will need it, but I guess it works. But it makes me a little cuckooer. Is that a word? More cuckoo? Oh, and to you, thank you so much.
Well, it's not far down to paradise. At least it's not for me. Wind is right, you can sail away and find tranquility. Oh, the canvas can do miracles. Just you wait and see. Believe me. It's not far to Never Land. No reason to pretend. And if the wind is right, you can find the joy. Innocence again. Oh, the canvas can do miracles. Just you wait and see. Believe me. Sailing takes me away to where I've always heard it. Just a dream of the wind. not far back to Santa Cruz. At least it's not home. And if the wind is right, you can sail away and find serenity. Oh, the canvas can do